All right, so I'm here today with Marko, the lead developer of the Cosmos SDK. And that interview matters because the Cosmos SDK is one of the most used framework in crypto for building blockchains. It is used, I think, Marko, like 50 plus blockchain at that point.
If not more.
If not more, yes. Actually, we should talk about that. Who's using the Cosmos SDK? Um, you know what? Let's start there. Let's start with an introduction of the Cosmos SDK. Why? What is it? When was it built? And when did you start working on it?
Yeah, for sure. So with the Cosmos SDK is a toolkit to develop a blockchain. So it's really right now it's really designed as like a framework. It gives you these same defaults on how to launch a blockchain, sane economics, sane governance, sane staking, and they are proven, tested, audited, and they are running on 50 plus blockchains today. You can really develop anything you want today, and the use cases are only getting better and better with the upcoming ABCI++ release. From the common team worked on by Informal. And kind of like, yeah, my background is I came in as a developer relations in 2019, I believe, onto the Cosmos SDK. That was back in All in Bits Day, and then worked on Tendermint, now Comet, for about a year and a half, 2 years, and then came back to the Cosmos SDK once that team got built out. Yeah, and the Cosmos SDK has been around. Well, that's a good question. It's been on and off. Like in the early days, like pre-hub, it was like written and rewritten, I think like 2 or 3 times. There was a version written by Ethan Frey, and then that he spun out and created Weave, which was a different framework early on. And then there was one written by Rigel. He was part of the SDK team early on, isn't part of the SDK team anymore. He's in Guelph, trying to solve Pi. And yeah, I think it was 2 times, and then we're continuing on that design right now. And we're quote unquote like rewriting it for a third time now. I think, and I'm hoping by the end of 2023, the SDK is going to look drastically different and a lot more flexible in what you can build with it.
Right. I think one of the interesting features of Cosmos is that there's many different teams that work on it over time, and sometimes they change, as you just mentioned here. So at present, can you give us a sense of who's working on the Cosmos SDK? I know you are a partner of Binary Builders. It's kind of a new company that spun out of the Interchain Berlin team. It would be great if you can give us a little bit of background on Binary Builders and who else in Cosmos is working with you on the Cosmos SDK.
Yeah, for sure. So the Cosmos SDK is definitely an interesting dynamic in the ecosystem because we have a lot of contributors from a lot of different chains, and we also have 2-3 teams who are kind of full-time development on it. So starting out from Binary Builders, Binary Builders was a recent company spun out of Interchain Berlin, and the primary focus of Binary Builders is the Cosmos SDK and the Builders Program. The Builders Program is kind of like an accelerator, kind of Y Combinator like thing for Cosmos chains for technical support, marketing, investing, token econ, like legal, all these, the whole 9 yards, let's say. And on top of that, so Region Network is helping out. Region Network was the core maintainer, and now we are like the co-maintainer with them. They're still very much involved. We have Origitech, who's doing a lot of performance and audit work. Zondax, who's maintaining Rosetta and the Ledger device compatibility. And also they're going to be rewriting how we do key signing in the near future. On top of that, we have contributions on a daily basis from Crypto.com, from Osmosis, from DYDX, from Say, like from a lot of these chains, from Barachain, from Evmos. Like from a lot of these chains, we're constantly talking with them, and if they find something, or if they find a bug, they fix it, or if they have a design change that they want to do, we talk about it. We think about the plan, how to get that design change in. So it's really a collective of people who are working to make the Cosmos SDK better.
It might be a tough question, but how big is that collective of people? How many people are working on from the binary side, from the region side?
Yeah, from the binary side, it's roughly 7 people right now. From the region side, I think it's three to 4 people right now. Origitech has, I believe, 2 people, and Zondex also has 2 people. And those are kind of like the people kind of like very focused on the SDK on a day-to-day basis. From Osmosis, I mean, Dave, of course, Dave and I like work together all the time. He now moved to Berlin. Slight promotion for everyone to just move to Berlin. But they've just moved to Berlin, so we're hanging out and constantly talking about different designs. They also like upstream a lot of work, review a lot of work. Then the Kronos team, there's one developer, Huang Yi, who's on the SDK almost on a daily basis. Like he's been helping out a lot on the IVL work, on a lot of research on databases. And so it's just really, those are like the core people who are like showing in day out, day in, day out. And then there's a multitude of other people who show in maybe like once or twice a week or once every other week and stuff like that.
Right. So would you say it's fair, like about 15 people that show in every day, and then a bunch of satellite people that contribute on a one-off basis, or maybe a little bit more?
Yeah, I'd say like 13-ish people who show up on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Yeah, that gives us a good sense of the progress there and how strong is the team, or how big it is. I'm assuming it's very, very strong, obviously.
Yeah, we don't.
But so there's a number of you can call that customers, you can call that users for the Cosmos SDK. We just mentioned that 50 plus. There's obviously a lot of the chain that we know and love in Cosmos. Are you aware of anywhere else outside Cosmos using the Cosmos SDK? Maybe separately, or they may have forked it, before it was taking shape, or is there any specific user?
I mean, Binance is a heavy user of the Cosmos SDK. They forked it early on. I mean, Polygon is another one. Polygon uses an early version of the Cosmos SDK and Tendermint. They rebranded it to Peppermint. But they're like super early users before, I believe they were Matic, and then they rebranded to Polygon. And then there's like OKX. Like there's a really a lot of like just kind of like random teams that you really don't hear about on a day-to-day basis that are using the Cosmos SDK. On top of that, like if we go into the enterprise space, there's a few teams who have like public blockchains that are in the enterprise space, but there's like a multitude of them who are also using the Cosmos SDK to build in enterprise settings. And that's getting more and more exciting seeing that happen. Go is like taking the spot of like Java in enterprise right now. And so I'd say we're lucking out there with a lot of enterprise users.
Yeah. Are you able to be in touch with all these guys, even Binance, Polygon? Like, are they getting in touch with you and asking questions or agreeing on directions?
I mean, when they do have questions, they do reach out, and we try and like talk to them on a periodic basis. I think for a lot of teams, like in the current state of the Cosmos SDK, there's a few of us who've been like working on the Cosmos SDK for many years, and we've built up this like backlog of things we need to like finish to clean up this tech debt and to enable a better like way to work with the software. And so a lot of the work right now is like, okay, like we need to like get this to this point in order to be able to like build more features, build this. And so right now, like as I was saying earlier, like by the end of 2023, the Cosmos SDK could look a lot different to how it looks today. Of course, it's going to be backwards compatible because we have 50 plus chains with billions of dollars in traffic. So we can't just like stop the world, close up shop for 6 months and rewrite everything from scratch, even though we'd love to do that. But we have users, so we can't do that. But yeah, we talk to them. A lot of the teams like Kronos, Osmosis, these teams that are already like close to the Cosmos SDK and like work on it. We talk to them weekly or bi-weekly, and then some of the other teams maybe every 3 weeks, once a month. We just check in, see what they need, see how things are going, if they have any questions, if they have any concerns, and get feedback from them.
Is there any team that you may not want to disclose that, but is there any team that reached out that could be making waves in the Cosmos ecosystem that are thinking possibly of using the Cosmos SDK?
Yeah, there's definitely a few. But yeah, I don't know if they'd want me to share, but it's definitely exciting seeing more people come. And I think like Cosmos has like carved out this like space in the blockchain ecosystem where a lot of people see using the Cosmos software as an accent to an existing application that they may already have. or it's like they just want to become sovereign because they have better control over their application and stuff like this. But there are users who are thinking of using the Cosmos SDK, but then they have their main application on Ethereum, and then you have this whole rollup notion that's coming out, and I think that's super interesting. But I think still a lot of people are more willing to think about an app chain over a rollup until we get to a certain future.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like us at for the tournament now Comet team, that we're getting these requests or questions or exploratory discussions with team that would be making waves if they were to switch over to Cosmos, but not necessarily something that we feel comfortable communicating at the moment. But I think there's a couple of exciting things in the pipeline. We'll keep it at that. For the in terms of managing all these blockchains and 50 plus blockchains, there was one event that occurred a couple of months ago that was quite big, and it came out on Twitter, but not to the scope that you guys experienced it in the actual team, and that was called Dragonberry. Actually, there was two things: Dragonberry and Elderflower, two major bugs for the Cosmos SDK that could have had serious impact for the ecosystem. Can you and I don't think there's been any clear, like, detailed retrospective about what that was. So can you tell us today, kind of a breaking news moment for Dragonberry? Marko, can you explain what that was and how that got solved?
Yeah, so it was definitely a fun weekend and week afterwards. So basically, that I think was that Friday, Binance experienced a bug. Since they're users of the Cosmos SDK and our software, there was part of the commitment structure that we use. We call it the IDL, and there was part of that software that we stopped using years ago, but we never deleted it, and they continued using it. And there was a bug in there, and we resolved it. We deleted that code since we don't use it, and all was well there. The issue came when Dave from Osmosis was like, I'm going to spend the weekend trying to find other bugs because I'm not convinced that this is like the end all be all. I'm not convinced like this is like, we don't have any bugs. So he spent the Saturday and part of Sunday, and then around Sunday evening, he was like, hey, I have a way to create an attack on IBC for ICS-23. And that's when no one was like, in a panic mode. Everyone was, for better or for worse, we're used to war rooms, and some of us enjoy it. And so we all got into a war room, all hopped in a call, came up with a plan, and then some of us started going to bed. It was Sunday night in European time, and then Monday morning we all hopped on a call, and on that call we started discussing the rollout plan. We started talking about how to communicate to each team, how to get them repositories, how to get them the code, and all these things. The interesting thing here is the affected code was in a different organization. So it wasn't in the Cosmos organization. So we had to work with Confio, another team, to pull it into the Cosmos org in a way that like we could put it into the Cosmos SDK without many people noticing what was the issue until all the networks updated. And so that was Monday. We're on a call. I think that day there was a Google Meets call for like 18 hours. Everyone stopped working on anything, canceled all meetings. And it was like me, Dave, Sonny, Bucky, Ethan Buckman, Josh, and a few other Osmosis and SDK people just like going through the steps of like what we needed to do. And then Monday evening comes and everyone's like, okay, let's get to bed. Like the issue is fixed. We've updated the majority of the biggest chains and a large majority of the smaller chains. Tuesday, everyone wakes up, everyone's going through a normal day, and then someone reports another bug. And all of a sudden I remember like I was in a call, and then someone reported the bug to me, and I was just like, okay, like another bug, go back to the chat and like, okay, we have another issue. This issue was a bit scarier because we didn't know how it affected all the chains. At that point, we hopped on another call, another Google Meets call, and then started talking about how to deal with it. We didn't know how many people were affected or if anyone was affected. And so we started auditing a bunch of teams' codes. We started with the Cosmos SDK and Gaia, did Injective, Chronos, Osmosis, a bunch of other teams in order to assess the potential damage of it. In the end, like we couldn't find a lot of the code was there was a lot of code that was a bit questionable. That like we couldn't fully understand what was like fully going on because of how the code was written. And so we assessed it that like, okay, we know that there's this bug. We know that there's this thing that can happen. On other chains, we're unsure because the code is very hard to understand and we can't really explain it to the team to go look at it. At which point we started, we sat on the call, and I think it was Ethan, and he just goes, "Are we really going to update the ecosystem for a second time in a single week?" And everyone's just like, "I guess so." And so it was back to that, and it was like that was Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, it was like planning, getting the code out, getting people updated. And that week, like me, Bucky, and Dave spent more time on a call with each other than we did with our partners, which was very interesting. I remember like one evening, like I went to bed and I woke up at 5 a.m. and I saw that there was a Zoom call, and I was in bed with my wife, and I like got on the Zoom call, and then she just says like, "Get off the Zoom call in bed." And so I got off and like went back to bed, but everyone was like so like distraught, didn't know what to do, just wanted to check in because we had to like pass off information based off time zones. And so it was very interesting. And then Friday everyone was like very beat, and so we started calling in a lot of the heavy hitters in the ecosystem, yourself, Thyborg, Yelena, like a lot of people to come help out on getting the word out. We wrote an information post on the forum about this is happening and stuff like this. Chains are updated, and so all was fine. That weekend, that Friday night, I remember we had a friend's party at our apartment, and every 30 minutes to 45 minutes, I just kept coming back to the Zoom call to check in how everything's going and check in with teams. And a lot of friends said that they've never seen me so tired in my life. That was like probably the most exhausting thing. And now it's like, there's like something that I've been saying for even before this, that like I don't want the Cosmos vision has always been 1,000 chains. And it's like I don't want 1,000 chains. Please don't give me 1,000 chains. I can't deal with that.
Yeah, there's probably a need for better organization for
Yes.
instant response if we're going to get to 1,000 chains.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think? So when you ask chains to update, what exactly are the steps that they have to take? Like, do you provide them with a patch, or do they have to work it out themselves, or what's the process there?
So it was very interesting because this was the first incident where we had to do something like this, where we had to we were so scared that we were scared to even like report it to the teams of like what the second security bug was. And so many teams were like, "Hey, like let's hop on a call, have you identify us, but we ask that you trust us in this patch. Like you can see the code, you can read the code, but we can't tell you where the fix is." And so a lot of people like audited the code and said like, "Okay, we trust you guys." A lot of validators also wanted to hop on calls to see, like, to make sure it's us, not just like because we were using Telegram. It's like, and someone could be impersonating us,
Right.
and spreading software to be run by a bunch of validators. And so there's a lot of verification. At the end of it, it was just still very scary for us because, there wasn't like a clean process to follow. We had like incidents in the past that were a lot smaller, but we never had something so big that we had to like talk to like hundreds of people in a couple of days to get chains updated. So it's definitely scary, but we've definitely learned a lot and set up processes since.
Yeah. Well, because potentially you could be you could be making like you wouldn't be Marko, like someone would be impersonating you, giving injective a patch for some malicious code, and then stealing all the injective TVL.
Yep.
So there was a bunch of trust in there that obviously is a kind of difficult in the blockchain world that to accept, but these things still exist. There's a lot of people to people relationship, which I think is kind of interesting in when that happens. What do you think should be changed for these incidents to be better managed next time? So that you can sleep.
I think we need actually a proper team to like do it, and people designated to do it. Up until that incident, I mean, that incident as well, it's basically been like volunteer firefighters, in which like it's always like me, Zucky, sometimes Bez, like Dave, Sonny, Bucky, um, and like we just show up and start doing things. And lots of this has changed since. So now there's even today there's a security advisory for an IPC Go patch. Huckleberry just announced on the forum. And I'm not involved in that as well. So we've definitely set up cleaner processes for teams to own the security process instead of just a few people showing up each time.
Yeah, I think it's also nice, and it speaks of the commitment of all the core teams that you guys didn't think 1 second whether you would do something about it. In theory, like you could just say, well, these guys for code, we provide free software, let them deal with it. But I don't think that was the thinking even 1 second on your side.
Yeah, I think I mean this goes back to, well, like I get asked why I joined Cosmos instead of some other ecosystem, and I think it's just really that like everyone is here for. I mean, the joke is like here for the tech or like here, but a lot of people here just because they're interested in building and they're just like interested in like working with like-minded people. There's like many of the engineers in Cosmos. Like we could have gone and built DeFi products. We could have gone and done X, Y, Z and like made millions of dollars, but we're still kind of like working on core software because we enjoy it. And it's like we get to work on stuff that actually interests us instead of just like building something and being stuck with it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That's also why when people look at the numbers from the ICF report and say, okay, these engineers get paid 300K a year, and that's too much, and is the ICF really spending the funds wisely? You have to think about the opportunity cost for these engineers and these companies, what they could be building instead if they weren't building the core software.
Yeah,
instead of,
I mean it's a problem we like as like now binary. I'm guessing informal as well. Like even the ICF and Interchain, Berlin, like all these teams, we have the amazing opportunity to build this software, and there's a few very very passionate people, and there's even more passionate people coming in. But the hard part is, okay, I'm gonna like spend a bunch of time training this person, and like I know sometimes I won't be able to pay them very competitively, and I know someone else is going to come and offer like 200, 250K, and it's going to be more attractive. And like there's nothing we can really do about that because being a core developer, and like you get a lot of poaching, and you get a lot of opportunities to make a lot more money. And I think it's very much speaking to the people who've been around on the core software the longest that they haven't left, even though the money's been better elsewhere.
Yeah, totally. I think that's something that people should really take into account. That these engineers, they have the knowledge to work on any blockchain essentially because they work on the core stuff, and so they are very appealing targets for headhunters and recruiters in Cosmos, and potentially all these companies that consider the Cosmos stack outside of Cosmos. So that's a very valid point. I mean, I wanted to ask. I didn't want to go into funding too soon, but I guess that's where we are. So let's keep going. What's the business model for Binary Builder and the other people working on the Cosmos SDK?
So right now, what we're doing is since we're a new organization, we're still figuring out a lot of things. We're primarily focused on the Cosmos SDK and the Buildlist program, and that is primarily funded by the ICF. Of course, we try and keep costs as low as possible, and pass those like cost savings on to the ICF as well. So Binary also has another venture called Numia, which is a data analytics platform in Cosmos, and that seems to be doing well. But it's not like we kind of treat Binary as more of a collective. And so we thought about passing equity out to individuals and like how that works. But when we really thought about like how the equity game works, it becomes like the only way you get a payout if you own equity is if the company buys it, if someone buys the company, or if the company buys it back from you. And in these scenarios, like we just kind of thought like we don't really see anyone buying Binary. Like we want to build an amazing company where people want to work. We don't want to like build it to be sold. We can do the buybacks, but the issue with the buybacks is like they only happen. They happen very irregularly. So it can happen every 2 years. It can happen every 3 years. Every year, even like And so we kind of like thought about like this, and we offered it to the team like, hey, we kind of asked everyone like, hey, we can do equity, we can share equity with everyone, or we can just do the value creators get the value. And so the idea here is we're all building this together. And so if someone is like doing a grant or doing some work that is like paid, then it's like, hey, like, why don't you brand it as binary? And like, we're a Swiss organization, and so we have the opportunity to treat some of these scenarios as like a pass through. And so we end up just passing that value back to the person who created that value. And then in this sense, it's not necessarily like, oh, binary is like in this to like make a bunch of money and stuff. We just want to build and have fun with the people we want to build. And that's why it's like also when we hire, we're hiring people that we want to be friends with, that we want to create a family with. And so I think that's like a main differentiator. And so on top of that, so we have like Numia. Right now, we have some validators. So previously, I was part of Binary Holdings, and that team was constructed of myself, owner, and two individuals from the Substrate Polkadot ecosystem. And so the Cosmos side is being spun into binary builders, and this will offer like another source of revenue for the team to be able to be a bit more self-sustainable. But also on top of that, we're exploring different sorts of things where the team can get advisorships and help teams with updating SDK versions, auditing, and kind of a multitude of things that really being the core maintainers of the software enables us to do.
Yeah. One other thing that we've been thinking of at Informal, and that's I think, obviously Informal and Binary Builder are very much have the same business model, and we are facing the same problems, is to get chains to contribute directly to the core software. So these chains have tokens. These tokens have a lot of potential. Sometimes some of them obviously don't, but some potentially have a high value in the future. And so aligning the core teams with the success of the entire Cosmos ecosystem, and creating this kind of funds, like pooled funds, so that they can be used for core software that includes Tendermint and Comet, that include the Cosmos SDK, that includes IBC. I think is an endeavor that is very much needed. And I know you've been one of the people that have been thinking about that from the very get-go for the longest time. And there's something called the CBF, right? Like the Cosmos Builder Foundation. And I think you were very much involved in that. So can you tell us a little bit about the CBF and what that looks like at the moment?
Yeah, so I mean the CBF kind of like slowed down just because a lot of work got reprioritized over it, and so there is a foundation that in the Caymans that is basically run by a DAO where teams can contribute to. The only thing here is like we haven't done a lot of the like BD talking to teams to like bring that funding in. The interesting thing here is like some teams are like, yes, like I want to give the money here and not have to worry about it. And then there's some teams who are just like, oh, I'd rather give the money directly to the team and I control where the money is going directly instead of like this committee. And so there's been an interesting dynamic on how that evolves. I think the whole public good story in open source is like the story, the tale that is like as long as time. It's basically just like in open source, everyone uses the software, but it's very hard to get people to contribute back. Confio is really pushing the cusp of it in Cosmos right now. They're getting contributions from very many. The hub recently, the Terra ecosystem is also paying like a monthly contribution, and so there are teams starting to contribute back. But I think we need to build like a stronger public good funding. I think that like right now it's easy to say, oh, the ICF does this, or oh, the ICF does that. But if we like the ICF's also like readjusting how they do funding, and it's not like the core teams will in 2024. There's no way to hide it. Will get a reduced budget from the ICF. And there's some teams who are potentially fine with that, and there's some teams who are going to be more affected. But I think like we shouldn't look at it as like, oh, teams are getting like too much money. It's like, how fast can we make the ecosystem? How fast can we get the software to a point where it's even more usable than it is today. Like even more features are being built out today, even more different designs, different research. Like Cosmos has been doing a lot of research over time, but it's been falling behind in terms of keeping up with the latest trends and stuff like this. So once we get to a certain point in the software, then of course we'll be able to accelerate that trajectory. And I think some teams are willing to pay, but I think we need to build a stronger story in the wider cosmos about PGF in general.
Yeah, stronger story and stronger value proposition for them. Like if you pay, you should have access to some kind of premium quality of service.
Yeah.
That is different from the people that just use the software for free. I think it's a very interesting conversation. Maybe not. Let's not have it completely today. It's a video on the Cosmos SDK, but this is obviously part of the interesting thing that people may want to learn about and that are not being talked too much. So that's why I wanted to ask a little bit about that. Something that is also interesting with regards to the Cosmos SDK is the kind of explosion of CosmWasm chains or people that use CosmWasm. So I was curious to get your take on that. Like as you see more and more teams like Osmosis, Terra, Juno, Neutron using CosmWasm and building kind of core features into CosmWasm versus using SDK modules. What do you think? Where do you think this is going, and what do you think is the role of the Cosmos SDK, and how would you adapt to this kind of changing landscape?
Yeah, I think that so there's an interesting, like, I definitely understand why people are using CosmWasm. Like, it is nice to be able to not have to like coordinate an upgrade of a chain to get new features in. This sort of upgradability is very nice, and of course, like the blockchain ecosystem has fallen in love with Rust, even though like all languages are kind of like more or less the same. Of course, you can do a lot of things in Rust, and a lot of things are being written for Rust. If you do it in Go, it's maybe a bit more difficult, but you can still do it. But so it's like very much so like everyone's using CosmWasm. Just it's like they can deploy, they can test, they can do these things very easily without having to upgrade their chain, and that's totally understandable because when we really dive into the Cosmos SDK, what we're really like getting into is and the narrative we're starting to push this narrative for the Cosmos SDK and for virtual machines in Cosmos, where it's like if you look at other so if we look at like a operating system, you have like the kernel space, and that kernel space is where like the core logic lives, where like a lot of it like heavy lifting is done, and then you have the user space that is where the user interacts with. And it's like if we think about the Cosmos SDK, we can think about like the core Cosmos SDK modules and like IBC Go as this like very powerful kernel within a blockchain, and then your VM, like your CosmWasm thing, is the thing that's like you can deploy contracts and interact with that kernel. I mean, this design is like very similar to like how Geth does it, as Ethereum does it. It's like they have the user space, and then you have like precompiles in the kernel. But it's like to update the precompile, you have to update the binary. It's not something that can just happen. And so that's kind of like the narrative around the Cosmos SDK. And I think it's totally fine for people to use CosmWasm. And I think it's actually very good that people are using CosmWasm because it enables them to do this sort of thing. Now, the other downside of CosmWasm is it is a virtual machine. Like, and if all the chains all of a sudden become Juno, where you can just deploy CosmWasm smart contracts permissionlessly, then it defeats the purpose of like an app chain. It's like, why would I deploy here instead of like somewhere else, like a different chain in Cosmos, like Neutron versus Juno versus something else. And so it becomes like a harder story to compel people to do. But I think like the use of CosmWasm is amazing. I mean, like the team behind CosmWasm put a lot of great thought into it and put a lot of great design. And of course, like yeah, the upgradability I think is like one of the biggest selling points in my eyes for why people want to use CosmWasm.
So what do you think will be the features that will stay at the Cosmos SDK level, and what will be the kind of feature that will move up to CosmWasm?
So I mean, it's very much up to the team, but I think it's like there is, of course, like a overhead to communicate to WASM. And so to pass this like FFI boundary to, and it uses like JSON. So there is this like slight overhead compared to just like a normal module. And so I do think that like some of this like low level things like IVC Go, most likely like the core functionality of like the clients verifying headers and stuff like this would stay within, if it can be written in Go in a timely fashion, it'd be written as a module. Like staking, distribution, all these things are also a lot easier today to write as a module because the functionality to start a chain and have the contracts deployed right away isn't the easiest right now. It isn't that easy to like run a chain based off proof of stake from the CosmWasm into the SDK. So there's a few things there. I think in the future, so like another thing we're playing around in the SDK is better support for like cross languages, to better support and communicate into different languages, to be able to write modules in different languages, Rust, JavaScript, C, whatever you'd like. And so I think once we get to that point, then we'll be able to see a lot of people kind of questioning, okay, do I need WASM here, or can I just write it in plain Rust? Because there is a limitation in what you can do in WASM as well.
All right. Well, that's super interesting. So you don't really see CosmWasm as a competitor, I guess. You see them as a team that is actually building, a useful feature for the Cosmos SDK.
Yeah, I think it's a virtual machine that the first implementation is against the Cosmos SDK. Of course, it's called CosmWasm, but I think it's an amazing feature that really like brings a lot of features and a lot of usability to users that maybe the Cosmos SDK cannot achieve in today.
Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you a question about mesh security. So the team there is building on the mesh security in CosmWasm. Do you think it would be useful to build mesh security in Go as well?
I mean, they're building it as like a mix between Go and CosmWasm. So there's like some stuff written on the Go side. There's some stuff written in the WASM side. I think it's interesting the WASM side, how it interacts with the Go side is like a lot of the core things, the low level things like message passing, IPC and stuff like this will most likely be written in like the Go side. But then it's like what the logic is. So like let's say the plugin for interacting with that lower layer would most likely be written in CosmWasm because they want to be able to update that if something were to happen or if a new design were to come out.
But do you think it's useful to have two implementations? Because right now some chains, including the Cosmos Hub, do not have CosmWasm. It's been radically rejected.
I think, it really depends on like their target audience and like how they want to expand. If their expansion plan is like you need to integrate CosmWasm and add this large dependency to your chain in order to get mesh security, then I think like some users won't be as willing to do it if they don't have CosmWasm there already. It is a large dependency and it does increase the scope of security issues on your chain. I'm not saying that there are any security issues in CosmWasm, but there's the potential always in software.
Yeah, true. So I'll have a separate discussion about mesh security probably with the Osmosis team. But for now, like talking about friendly competition or not friendly competition, what do you see is what in the crypto world in general outside of Cosmos? What do you see as the alternative to the Cosmos SDK at the moment, and which one do you think have the potential to kind of catch up to the Cosmos SDK?
I'm not the right person to ask because I have a very strong opinion about this. I'm not sure I should share it on a recorded podcast, but I think like if we take a look at the ecosystem, there's a lot of frameworks out there, and there's not very many SDKs or toolkits. And I think it is like kind of it's like poking like a small knit on like the ecosystem. So it's like we have this framework that's like like the OP stack, all these things. It's like you have to use Solidity, and then you have things like Substrate, which is like a toolkit to develop a blockchain similar to the Cosmos SDK. I think Substrate is like a really nicely written piece of software. I think it's like their abstractions are like very, very nice, and like sometimes like the direction that we are taking the Cosmos SDK, or like not the Cosmos SDK, but the direction that we are potentially taking like the interchain stack, doesn't like, it's not mimicking their design, but it's like kind of like some of their abstraction layers that like we've been talking about for years. And then it's like I go read the Substrate repo because I'm like looking for something else. Also, my wife works at Parity, And I have a lot of friends in the Polkadot ecosystem. So then when we talk about this, they're like, oh, like, yeah, like we have like an abstraction for this, and then they send it over to me and then I go read it. So it is like their software is like very, very well written, I'd say.
Right. So the OP stack is the optimism stack. I think that's what Coinbase is going to be using for their base rollup on top of Ethereum.
Yeah.
And Substrate is obviously the Polkadot ecosystem. Is there any other option out there that I'm not aware of?
I mean, there isn't really many people who kind of like have a differentiator between like kernel space and user space. And I think it's like Cosmos, the Cosmos SDK is like the one that's like kind of like pushing this a bit harder. Like in the OP stack, like they have like, oh, you can add whatever precompile you want, and then you have to write your thing in Solidity. And it's just like you can't really write smart contracts in WASM or anything else. Then there's Arbitrum. Arbitrum has their I forgot the name of it, but they also have their like WAVM, not WASM, but it's WASM based, but it's WAVM. And they have a very interesting design. They do some very cool like technical challenges, and it's been very interesting like learning about their software stack and diving into it. But I also think it's like they're hyper focused in like this sequencer world, in this rollup world, where it's like the Cosmos SDK is like kind of living between both worlds. It's like, for example, like you have Rollkit from Celestia, who's developing an alternative to Comet to be used as a sequencer with the Cosmos SDK. And in this world, it's like the Cosmos SDK can either be a rollup or a blockchain, while some of these like other frameworks like Optimism and Arbitrum are like primarily focused only on rollups.
Yeah. Are you in touch with the rollup kit guys? They seem pretty friendly to Cosmos in general, building on top of this.
Yeah. I talk with them. I talk with them all the time. They're an awesome team.
Yeah, I think it's good that people like you keep an eye on all that stuff and are aware of what's going on in other ecosystems. Sometimes I'm worried that everyone is hyper focused on what's going on in their code editor, and they don't look at they don't have any other Chrome windows to look at what the OP stack is doing, or Optimism or Rollkit or Celestia. It's good to see that you are not one of these people, and you are married to someone from Polkadot, so you can spy also a little bit on the competition there.
Exactly.
So in terms of what's coming for the Cosmos SDK, like the features, I guess, that you're most excited about that your team is building.
So yeah, so right now we're gonna have like the Eden release, and the Eden release is primarily focused on like a refactor of our commitment structure, which is IVL, make it more performant. And then we have the completion of ABCI++, and then we have some boilerplate cleaning up on modules. And those are like super exciting. I'm kind of more excited of like what's coming next. And so what's coming next is like we have some work on like different account abstraction designs. We're going to be rewriting the auth module, introducing an accounts module to introduce the notion of like a newer notion of account abstractions. But also we want to be rewriting staking, like rewriting these modules. The thing in the future is like, I'm kind of like more excited so the module level is like where a lot of app devs work, or app devs interact with. I'm more excited about like the lower layers. So we're going to be introducing this thing called like runtime modules, where it's like a runtime module is like Comet. Comet would be a wrapper for the runtime. It could be Rollkit, it could be Substrate, it could be like really anything that you can really is a consensus engine, and then like any extra logic that you need on top of that consensus engine can live within that runtime. Of course, like the default will be Comet, because that is like the most proven software out there, in my opinion. And so like so that's like really exciting, because it really opens the door of like what you can build with the software, and you're not limited to only what one thing is doing. I've been doing so we've been doing a lot of work, me and a few people, on what we'd want to see out of like a application and consensus engine interface, and talking with a lot of users, and we've kind of like come to the conclusion that in some way like ABCI is like somewhat limiting in what we can do, and we think that like actually like half of ABCI could just be removed. And so we've been talking with the Comet team. There's a Comet community call tomorrow, and so we'll be talking with them about that and seeing their take on it. But in general, I think there's like a lot of things in the pipeline for the core layer, Like also we're going to rewrite the storage package, and we're going to introduce different commitment structures. Been talking with Deb from Osmosis about KZG, and so been researching a bit about KZG from the Ethereum space. So there's like a multitude of things coming that were like, they are refactors and they are potential rewrites, and they're introducing new features, but at the same time they're cleaning up a lot of this technical debt that we still have existent in the SDK.
Yeah, you guys are doing a lot of the ungrateful kind of heroic work that no one sees, except for obviously for the people that actually build blockchains. But for the users, it's hard to see what exactly these things means, and how they're going to be useful and how they're going to make the price go up.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess that's why you are in this. Like it's a long-term game.
Yeah, I think like a lot of teams, like there's been a lot of discussion about intents right now in the blockchain space. Like intents is like intents is the new word and stuff like this. But I think it's like it's interesting. Like smart transactions is definitely interesting, like Prolog and stuff like this. But I think the more interesting thing is like when I talk with like some teams, it's like there's a lot of block space in Cosmos, and every time a chain launches, there's even more block space. And so it's like there's so much block space. How do we take advantage of it? And then like we are building infrastructure, and something I ask a lot of teams who are also building chains. It's like, who are you building this for? Like, and because there is like Cosmos is like in its own bubble in a way, and like blockchain is in a slightly bigger bubble. But then there's like the whole world out there. Like, how do we get those people in? And those are like kind of the interesting things that we get to ask teams and work with teams to figure out.
Yeah, I can tell you one exciting application that is not infrastructure and that is being built out in Fall is the collaborative finance effort. That is something that is kind of hopefully going to explode the bubble and permeate the rest of the real world with actual companies doing actual real world stuff, jumping on board and clearing debt through blockchain technology, built through the Cosmos SDK on top of the Comet BFT tournament consensus engine. So that's one to look out for. Marko, that was super instructive. I think we should do, I could have asked you so many questions on each of the topic that we briefly touched on today. There's definitely another episode on the Cosmos public good funding that I want to do with you, and probably one about the features you mentioned and ABCI++ and Comet BFT. So anyway, thanks for coming today. That was great. We'll do another one maybe a couple of months from now.
Easy. Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me on.
See you.
Go to.